Okay, if you're seeing this, that means you have followed the link in my latest video that will take us to just a brief explanation of what the first fruits were. So, Leviticus chapter 23 gives the specifics from the Lord on his appointed feast. These are the Moedim. Now, you know what that is. It is special convocations, translated feasts. These are the feasts of the Lord. And the third of the spring feasts was called the Feast of First Fruits, Bakarim. And that was the first fruits of the first harvest of the year. The first fruits of the first harvest would be the first fruits of the barley. And many people are confused, but let me share with you just a little bit of a scribble so that you'll understand. Let's say we've got a field here, and the requirement of the Lord this is after they came into the land. By the way, these feasts would begin after they came into the land, other than Passover. When Passover happened, it was to be celebrated every year perpetually from that point on, and that there would be a first fruits. And it would coincide, by the way, with Israel leaving Egypt, crossing the Red Sea on the third day. So that typology is always there. But let's say this is our field of harvest. Now, this might be barley. And the predominant harvests, of course, were first the barley, and then came the wheat. After the wheat came the summer fruit. I'm about to run out of room, aren't I? Summer fruit. Let's move it over just a little bit. And then lastly came the olives. Or these are the harvests of oil. So this became known as wine. This, of course, was bread. And that falls into two categories, by the way, bread. And the other is wine and, of course, oil. So you have bread, wine, and oil. Now, this typology follows, and I used last week in our video several different scriptures that shows that this typology is really what the pattern is all about. So you have bread, wine, and oil. Now, the Feast of Barley was the first. And so the first fruits was going to be of the barley. So you would go into your field, and let's call this a barley field. It would work the same for a wheat field. Of course, it wouldn't work for a field of summer fruit because that is the vineyard. So it's not necessarily a field. It's going to be a vineyard. And olives come from trees. So you have olive trees. It's an orchard. But the pattern is the same. So you would go into your field as the first of the fruit would become Abib. That means ripened or green Abib. Now that became the name of the first month. This is the first month, which was the month in which the Abib was to be celebrated. You would go in and find the first bits of the Abib. So you would go and find a sheaf. A sheaf. Let me shrink this down. Let me raise it up just a little bit. A sheaf, and cut that sheaf. So this would be the first of the wheat. Pardon me, the first of the barley. That's supposed to look like a sheaf. Doesn't look very much like a sheaf. Okay. Hey, welcome to the scribbles. Let's shrink the pen down just a little bit. You're well accustomed with this already. Unless you're first time watching of the channel, we do a lot of scribbling here. So you would bring the sheaf as the first fruits offering to the priest. The priest would wave the sheaf. So it's a cluster of barley sheaves, and you would wave that as a first fruits offering. What this would do with the first fruits then would be the first designation is to the Lord, and the Lord would provide then the harvest. Okay, so the harvest is promised according to the waving of the sheaf. That's the first fruits. Now, the first fruits of the barley happens on the 17th of Abib, or later became known as Nisan. That came from the captivity of Babylon. That's a Babylonian word, but it's Abib. So the greening of the barley, when it's first turning white, you would take that. It would be in the month of Abib, and it would be waved before the Lord, and that would provide for the harvest. This was done in thanksgiving for the coming harvest. The same thing followed for the wheat. This is the same pattern, but now it's wheat and not barley. Okay? So the designation was that 50 days later, barley harvest plus actually 49 days or 7 Sabbaths. 7 Sabbaths later, plus a day on the next day, would be the first fruits, or the counting of the Omer to the point where the very first of the wheat would be brought in as a first fruits. This later became known as Pentecost, but its Hebrew name is Shavuot. Okay. Now don't be confused. This is number 1. This is number 2 of the harvest. Now we learn later from the Dead Sea Scrolls, from the temple writings, that another harvest, and by the way, it lands according even to nature itself, another harvest is going to happen plus 49 and a day, or another Pentecost, and it would be the ripening, the first ripening of the grapes would be crushed, made into new wine, and the new wine would be poured on the altar. Now, I know that you get probably that there are several first fruits of these harvests, so because there's many harvests. Later on, another, I don't have room here, but another plus 49 is going to land you right about or right on the Feast of Trumpets. And that 49 plus 1 equals 50 is another Pentecost, and it would be the first fruits of the crushing of the olives. So the first olives would be crushed, and there would then be a harvest that would come of olives. Now that's going to be a quicker harvest. All these are going to be done and complete by Tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles, because Tabernacles was an 8-day celebration of two things. First of all, it's 8-day celebration that of living in the tents, living in booths, because the Lord tabernacled with them in a tabernacle. Okay, so they were in tents. He had his tent, and they dwelt together. That was the figure. It also prefigures the fact that God is going to dwell with his people. All right? Now, it's also the celebration of the ingathering, meaning all of the harvests, the predominant harvests, are over. Harvests are complete. All right, now, the confusion, I think, that brings a little bit of I don't get it feeling is that we, in explanation, tend to fail to mention that this is the first harvest. Jesus, in that first fruits, fulfilled all subsequent first fruits. Fruit, forgot an I. He fulfilled them all in one fail, swoop. I probably misspelled that, but it's a good. In one moment, in one event, all right, Jesus fulfilled them all. One fell swoop. Okay, one fell swoop. In one action, his action on the cross, all right, and the resurrection from the dead, which happened on the first fruits, fulfilled all of the first fruits of all of the harvest. How so? Jesus died and rose again for the barley harvest. The barley is all who believe. He did it for the wheat harvest. Now, the barley harvest is the one that is raised into the wind, right? Lifted up. What's that sound like? Rapture. Rapture of the church. He also was the first fruits of the wheat, but the wheat will be crushed in a tribulum. All right, so there will be those who, by the way, the first fruits rising from the dead, the fulfillment of that upon all of the first fruits means that there will be those who come alive or have life because of what Christ did, even during these periods of time. Now, some would say this is hyper-dispensationalism. No, it's not. It's quite biblical. It's quite down the line with what the Bible tells us is going to happen. There will be tribulation saints. What are these? Who are these folks? These are folks after the rapture event who will believe, and they will be saved. They will be born again. They will be saved. It is also by grace. It is by the Holy Spirit. All right? It's the same. It's the same. Okay, but it's after the event. After the event. And they will go through a crushing. He died also for the wine, the grape harvest. He died for the wine. The wine, and this is how I look at it, and I think others do too, but the wine is specifically new wine. And this is Israel. This is the remnant that will believe on Messiah and fly into the wilderness. There they will be kept for 3.5 years. This is the new wine. The oil, directly related also to Israel. The oil will be Israel at the end. This is surviving Israel, by the way. A lot of Jews are going to die during the tribulation because they will have received the false Messiah. But there will be many, and they will still live around the world, by the way. At the end of the time of Jacob's trouble, which corresponds to the Great Tribulation and Daniel's 70th week. Let me go down here, move it up a little bit. Daniel's 70th week. 7 years, 7-year period of time. At the end of that, Israel, the oil, the olive branch, the olive tree, will be restored. Israel saved. This is the oil. This is the oil. All right? Now, this has just been quick, but Jesus died one time. Jesus was the first fruits of all. Okay? So he was the barley waved before the Lord on the cross, waved before the Father on the cross. He was the wheat crushed. His body was broken. Remember on Shavuot, there are 2 loaves of bread that are raised. That's signifying that his body was broken. The bread, he said, take this bread. He broke it. This is my body. The bread was broken. That's the wheat. He is the wine. His blood was shed. This is my blood shed for you. Okay. So the wine, he becomes the wine. And yes, these are different Pentecosts and different things happened on those Pentecosts, but Jesus paid for them all. And then, of course, he was the oil crushed in judgment. He took the judgment, and oil stands for judgment. So Israel will go through this 7-year period of judgment, and at the end, they will call out to the Father, and they will believe on Jesus. They will say, Baruch haba Hashem Adonai, and they will be saved. So it's the judgment, this 7-year period of judgment. But Jesus was crushed on the cross in judgment. He was crushed. He was bruised for our iniquities, right? The chastisement of our sin was upon him. He took the judgment and took it to the tomb. And then he rose again as the first fruits of all who would rise again from the grave. Okay? Now that's a verse. That's a picture that goes for whether we are dead in Christ or remain, whether it's rapture or by various resurrections along the way, okay? He is the first fruits of the resurrection from the dead and the rapture for all. Either by waving, by crushing, whatever. Jesus fulfilled it all. Okay? I know that's a mess right there, but, and very simply put, don't try to have Jesus fulfilling all of the subsequent Pentecost with different events. The first fruit has to be by the one. Jesus fulfilled them all at the start by the first fruits, and the first fruits of all the first fruits. He was the fulfillment of all. In turn, okay? Each one will rise in turn, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 15. In turn, there's going to be a resurrection. In fact, there's going to be a resurrection of the wicked dead. And it's not going to be to a wonder and a glory. It is going to be to eternal judgment. Jesus fulfilled them all on the cross and coming out of the tomb. Okay? So that's the end of this quick video. We're going to leave it at that. And hopefully that will give you some answers in a very quick, simple way to help you understand the picture of the first fruits. It's the patterns of all of them. They're all fulfilled in Jesus on the cross. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. And to this video, and you will already have the video and access to the video, you'll have access to the comments, okay? All right, Lord bless you.